do my little presentation called Aging into Saging, a phrase I picked up from one of my rabbis, that your whole life is supposed to turn you into a wisdom figure. So School of Rock, what does it have to do with wisdom? I don't know. He teaches these kids something about the history of rock and roll, makes them believe in themselves and draws their creativity out of them. So in some way, he's really showing them the way to be wise, even though he is a charlatan at a certain level. All right, so the wisdom of aging. First thing is to realize that we are connected through our families. And we share a connection genetically. But I would say, what's your perception of your own family's aging process? How did you view yourself, depending on what age you are? How do you view your parents or your grandparents or other siblings? Or philosophically, just aging in general? Usually, we could go around, if this was a weekend retreat, and talk about what are your negative takeaways or fears about aging, and is there something positive? Is there a blessing in aging? Anyway, many cultures have the idea of the sage personality, right? And since nature programs for success, as Carl Jung mentioned, there must be a reason why the second half of life continues 30, 40, 50 years or more after a person has passed on their genetic material. Not that anyone is obligated to have to reproduce, but of course, if no one did, there would be no more race. So majority of people are going to foster children. And so after you do that, if you want to say that the purpose of life is for the genes to replicate themselves, your job is done. But if nature programs for success and to a certain state, doesn't make mistakes, then the second half of life is not a mere appendage to the first life. It must be for something, which is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming more fully who you are till the day you die. Now in Macbeth, they had the idea of the three witches, the Weird, a Welsh word, W-Y-R-R-D-D. The Weird represents the specific connection that each one of us has to spirit, and how that is what helps you with your impossible task, whatever that is. And of course, it's your way, it's not anybody else's way. So to other people, it may look weird, but you don't care because it's your weird. Now, I love the whole idea of like the cousin Itlook from the Addams Family. But what it's really trying to tell you is that once you bridge out into the idea of unity or community, you can't do that if you exclude strangeness and otherness. Right? Each one of us has a strange inside ourselves that makes us feel different than other people, and we look at other people and see them as strange too. Because other than right? That's what I always quip about my relationship with my wife. Yeah, she's other than how I want her to be. Anyway, you realize that I have potential to be a healer. You didn't know that's your business? Yeah. We're all in the healing business, and how we talk to each other, act to each other, cooperate and collaborate with each other. So one of the things we usually say is pick a mode of healing. So do you know what your gift is? Because your gift is one of the ways that you're going to contribute and help to heal other people. So as you get older, you want to step more into this ability to help people with your gift. I appreciate your candor, Tim, but you can't keep calling in lazy. One of the things that happens when you're older is your ability to just say the truth, bold, raw, naked, ulterior motive except being direct and straight. Disarming candor. And strangely enough, when I listen to somebody else, it kind of strips you of your honor, unless you're holding on so tight that you don't allow that to happen. Now, once you're willing to face this part of yourself, you realize there's a part of you that is like a first responder. That you're not going to wait for other people. You're going to go in and triage right away, find out where the bleeding is and try to stop it right away. So I want to honor everyone for the courage it takes to do this work, especially when sometimes you feel alone, you got to handle the whole burden by yourself. It's brave to do that. Now, here's I'm just using his as an example. Somebody kind of lived his principles, and that's how you become authentic. Two different aspects of that word. One is like author, to make something, and the entic part is like the being part. So there's a part of us that all of us, we become what we love. Remember, whatever you practice, you're going to get good at. So what are you practicing? Right? That's how you find authenticity. You be or do the thing that is really you. Now, as you age, it's almost impossible not to, at some point, informed by your own death. Your own death is an agent of completion, like a period at the end of the sentence. It kind of finalizes neatly. Matter. They don't subordinate the life to some other supposed life, because if you believe in miracles, don't believe in miracles, maybe it's because you've forgotten you are one. The fact that we're here at all is unbelievable. How all the forces and causes and conditions have happened to make it such that human beings have evolved, and that we're conscious of the universe being having eyes and ears through us. It becomes self-reflexive, aware of itself through us. Now, I like the idea of the life of Pi. Tell a better story. Who knows if it's really true or not? But which is the one that you want to live with? Which is the one you want to pass along? So they say that by faith, you have the power to create the thing you have faith in. By faith, you have the power to create the thing you have faith in. So what are you putting your faith in? Tell a better story. And we do this in order not to flee, but to transform, protect, and sanctify the world, the here and now, for everybody. Only one home, Earth. Only one family, humanity. Got to expand your soul to open up to that vision. Mark Twain says, faith is believing what you know ain't so. It's a point past which it's a mystery, but you still invest a certain kind of belief in it. Like in the Jewish tradition, they can't talk about the infinite light, the Ein Sof, so they image it as a king in profile. All you see is what's on this side, like the dark side of the moon. You can't see what's on the other side. So making any statement about that, even if it's an intuitive glimpse, has to fall short. So I would say err on the side of caution, because they say the gods withdraw from an irreverent and inhospitable world. So make it reverent and hospitable and invite the deities. Literalism banishes beauty to the back burner. Yeah, talk to the hand. These are metaphoric statements of spirit reaching to humanity. If you think of it only historically literally, you miss some kind of allegorical, homiletic, political interpretation. Then you're kind of stuck with having to go against science and reason. And then the importance of having evidence in your life is not so paramount, but it ought to be. Anyway, searching for Sugarman, my wife turned me on to. He was found after many, many years, just living a simple life as a carpenter, a working man. But he had written so many songs, almost like Bob Dylan, that never caught on in the United States, but became a major theme for the South African fight against apartheid. And they eventually found him and brought him there for a series of concerts. But the thing here is to realize that sometimes when you're doing all this work on yourself, as the biblical story says, a prophet is not without honor except in his home country. You may not be able to get the recognition at all, and hopefully you deserve it from your own family or from your friends or from people who grew up with you and they knew you when. So often you have to go somewhere else to find the validation. Now, finding the validation, of course, has to do with really it has to do with realizing that you're shown the way by the example of the other people. They model excellence, but they show you the way in them. They can't show you anything other than how to go to the way, but you have to figure it out yourself. And so mentors like Mr. Iyengar, he models for you what to do, and then the ball's in your court. Mentors do not pass on dogma or certitude, but they pass on the passion for the thing that you both love. And then that's what has to inspire you for the rest of your life. And you have to learn to re-inspire yourself. And the only way you can do that is you have to learn to reframe, to look at the past and be the one who's going to find redemption, which means to put new values on it that save it, that cast it in a different light, that enable you to find something you can take away from it, honor it, animate it, and then learn to imagine new ways of perceiving what it was. In John Bradshaw's system, he has a fourfold approach to working through addictions, which is just a really great model for making any kind of change. And the first one is behavior modification. Just don't smoke cigarettes or don't drink or, curb your anger, whatever it is. Do something different so that you're literally acting your way into feeling better by not doing what the old addiction was. Second thing is what's called original pain work. To descend into the old hurt, to allow yourself to feel the vulnerability of what happened or didn't happen to you that left an indelible mark, maybe even a crippling mark, a shameful mark, one that inhibited you or enslaved you to a certain way of being. In yoga, they call it the samskaras, the deep impressions that make you act in a habitual way, in a patterned way, so that you're not free. So by doing that work, you free a lot of that pent-up energy connected to the emotion that's in some way unfinished and didn't come to closure. Because if you just stuff it and keep the lid on the pressure cooker, it leaches the vitality out of the rest of your life, and then you don't have anything left over for creating a new you or a new world. Then the third thing is what they call cognitive corrective. You have to look at the situation and choose to see it in a different way. So if your parents got divorced when you were younger and it broke up the family, but then your mom or your dad remarried, and then the stepfather or the stepmother comes in, and either they bring in children from a previous marriage and you find a new brother and sister who you're really connected to, or maybe their attitude is very different than the parent that was no longer in the marriage, and then you find that there's a new connection to a mature adult who can show you love and acceptance and a very, very different attitude than what you might have experienced from your original parent. So you see it in a different way, and all of a sudden you hold it differently now because of your willingness to change your perspective or change the way you define what happened to you. So that maybe it was a blessing behind the curse. And I'm not saying you can always find a silver lining behind every dark cloud, but a lot more of them can be looked at in a different way, and you can choose to spin it this way. That's called reframing. And then the final one is what they say is an inner life. At the same time that you're doing this work, you learn to identify less. Meditation would say don't identify at all, but identify less with who is the protagonist in this storyline. And by moving away from the externals and finding a life that's spiritual and has more internal values, things that you are experiencing inside of yourself that are not necessarily connected to a reference point outside of yourself. And that inner life that comes from studying, mining the scriptures, meditating, doing yoga, whatever the discipline is that shifts the emphasis away from the circumference of your life to the center of your life, then that's some way that you can redeem the past. And if you do that, then you realize, well, Step into the fire, because that which would give off light must endure burning. So you ready? You better like amp up your nervous system with some pranayama. And then you start opening up to what I call the teaching as a rainbow. That, for instance, in yoga, when you first begin, the red ray is just doing asana practice. Then after a while, you realize, well, there's also breath practice, the orange ray. Then you realize there's deep relaxation practice, the yellow ray. And then you realize there's service or meditation, there's the green ray. And then there's service, the blue ray. And then there's lifestyle change, the purple ray. And then eventually it's all integrated into, there's no one specific reason why you're doing it, not just for health or mental calmness or emotional stability or spiritual connection, until eventually you're not even defining why you're doing it. You're just, this is how you are. It's like asking the sun, why does the sun shine? Why does a flower look pretty? That's just the nature of its being. So the rainbow teaching takes over, and now you're integrating all these different levels or modalities of yoga. And then as you age more and more, the wisdom of the elder is to manifest in its teaching people how to live in harmony and balance with each other and the earth. So no longer as concerned about economics, no longer that part of you that's in the workforce. You're not necessarily worried about therapeutics, which you're sick as you get older, and then it's another way that people choose to see you. You don't earn, and you're a burden on the medical establishment. But elder wisdom is something that's very, very different, not contingent or dependent upon your economic learning or how well or ill you are. So you learn to speak from your own experience. Right? You're not a retailer for other people's thoughts. Right? You may study other people's ideas, but at some point you have to work the field for yourself. And then when you do that, of course, there's power in it, because the authenticity comes from the truth of your experience, and it's not borrowed. So you're going to ascend as a result of doing this. You're going to have a certain kind of fire, because there's a part of you that's looking to the transcendent, fueled by the transcendent, fired by the transcendent, you could say. And you're on fire for this. You can't forget it. This is what it's all about. And then there's the descending path, which doesn't take you up toward the one where all things are obliterated in the ultimate unity, but brings you down to the blood and the snows. And this is where you have compassion for the suffering of yourself and other people. And as this t-shirt so cogently says, it begins with you. Don't have to look to other people to do this work. You're the one who has to do it. Don't ask for whom the bell tolls, as they say, right? And then finally, we get towards the end here, where we realize, as the doctor says, center this, and that's why we lift on 3. Really important to communicate with people and not think people are psychic and understand, even though we do have a kind of nonverbal, intuitive understanding when we look at a person's facial expression, body language, vocal tone. Is it congruent with the words they say and the vibe that they're putting out? But then from communication comes the final connection, which is communion. How do we connect with each other? My teacher used to say, when I only say words, I communicate, but when I touch and give the hands-on adjustment, then there's communion between us. So that leads us back to the ultimate in yoga. Everything we're doing is to experience this unity of existence. And that happens more and more with grace and elegance as we continue the aging process.